right. So I hope to cover quite a bit. I think we're going to hold any product development questions that you might have until the end. As you've already noticed, I have some of my PD colleagues joining this session. I've got business analysts Bashar Nassar, Frederick Donberg is going to be joining us, as well as Ole Renard. And then I have Christina Schofast, who is Director of Product Development in the session as well. So we'll be able to answer any questions you have. You're welcome to write them in the chat or use the raise your hand tool and ask them at the end of the presentation. So just a little bit of technical things. I ask that you mute yourself during the session. And also, I think we're going to go ahead and ask if you could turn off your video, and I'm also going to turn off mine, so maybe we won't run into any performance problems on the internet. And as you heard, we're going to be recording this session, so we'll be happy to share that recording with you or the slideshow if you're interested. Again, and thanks for your patience. This is the first time we're holding the conference online, and we hope that it's a good experience. So let's get started. Excuse me. Okay. We're going to start with the tips and tricks. Turn off my video here. Okay. We're going to start with some tips, and we're going to be focusing on 4 or 5 areas, and they are working with multiple items, shortcuts in the structure tree, creating issues, batch editing attributes, and using the built-in image editor. We want to encourage you also to share any tips that you may have. So I want you to consider logging into our support portal and adding them to our tips and tricks forum. Just remember to keep your examples generic. How you do that is you need to be logged in to the support portal, navigate to forums, and then navigate to tips and tricks, for example. And if you're logged in, you'll be able to start a new topic. You can add your information there. And if you're interested in following this forum or any other forum, you'll find a follow button on the right here that you can click. What this does is you'll receive an email notification each time a new topic is added to the forum. And then once you review it, if you decide you want to follow that particular topic, you can follow it, and then you'll get subsequent emails if there's any activity, anybody responding or making comments. So we encourage you to participate actively in our forums. We're hoping that they will become a useful added resource for our users. Okay. Working with multiple items, the Explorer offers lots of different ways, as most of you know, to work with your data. So I'm just going to show you 4 ways that you can work with multiple items, because most people won't just stay on one item and manage to do their work. One of the really simple ways is using the navigation menu. Get my pointer here, my laser pointer. So the navigation menu is up here in the top left corner, and you can use it when you need to jump back and forth between different parts in your structure, maybe more infrequently. And how it works is when you click the back button, it's going to return you to your previous location and view. So it's a combination there. It may be that you're on the same item, but that you're changing views of the data. So clicking the back button is going to switch you back through the views, as well as, back to other items that you may have been on. And then once you've used the back button, the forward button becomes available, and you can sort of navigate in the other direction. So I'm just going to show you briefly how that works. For example, I'm up here on the top item, and maybe I want to jump down here and look at attributes, and then I jump down here and go back to overview. So if I hit the back button, first it takes me back to the last view I was on this same item, and then I jump back up to electronic system architecture with attributes, and then to the overview, which is where I was first on this item, and then back up to the top item. So one way to navigate through multiple items in the same structure. Another tip is to use the open item in new tab, which is the Control-O shortcut. So as many of you are aware, you can have numerous pages or items parts open in the Explorer. And many users want to do this because they keep jumping around. They have maybe some favorite items that they need to visit frequently. And you can navigate between them. You can move pages to prime locations towards the left, for example, if you're visiting them often. But the Control-O shortcut is a way to jump back and forth between these items and parts maybe a little bit more frequently. I'm going to show you that as well. So, for example, I come down here to audio control. I hit Control-O. It opens up in a new tab here. I can move it, for example, way over to the left if I am going to be jumping back and forth maybe more frequently. Now, just so you know, if audio control had already been an open page in my Explorer and I hit Control-O, what it does is it just takes me to the already opened page. It just changes focus. So those are two simple tips. Moving on to a couple more, we have a view called the secondary item view. What this does is if you need to view an item in two different views at the same time, or if you need to see one item in a view and keep it in focus while you're viewing other items in another view. So, and this secondary item view is a great option given that use case, and if you only have one monitor to work with. So to do this, show you that. As you see here, I've selected this item here and opened up a secondary view of it here. So I can show you that. Jump back to this structure here. So in the functional requirements, I have my overview view loaded. That's sort of the default view. But let's say I want to look at this grid here. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click, and you can click on any of the views up in the ribbon. Now I have the grid on function requirements open on the right, and I have the overview of function requirements on the left. What it can do is I can lock this grid in place so it remains in focus, and I can navigate then through my structure, and the overview view will move with me, so I can make my changes or whatever I need to do. And what's cool about the secondary item view, even if it's locked, you can get it to refresh. For example, let's say I want to add another requirement here for adaptive cruise control. Now you see here adaptive cruise control, you can't see the new item that I created, but I simply just hit F5 and it refreshes even though it's locked. Another great thing about the secondary item view is you have an option, if you'd like, to undock this view, and it will display in front of the main window, and you can continue to work back here as well with it undocked, and you can move this to a second monitor if you have that. Okay. And a similar solution for working with different items or one item and multiple views is the open item in a separate window. So the use case here is basically the same as the secondary item view, very similar to what I showed you before. So I can hit Control-Alt-O and immediately get up that secondary window that I can then move to a different monitor if I'd like, and I can work behind it as well. And now if you notice that whichever item I was standing on and opened it on, that's where you're going to be focused. You can change the view if you'd like. But again, this is also a great way to work with multiple views simultaneously. Okay. And just to summarize, with these two alternatives, you have options to view two views at the same time and or two items simultaneously. You are able to lock and keep a focus on a selected item while you're navigating and working with other items. And both of them offer sort of an undock layout alternative. Okay, excuse me. Next, we're going to talk about shortcuts in the structure. There are many shortcuts in the structure. We're going to focus on a few of them, some of the basic ones that will make your work more efficient. The first one is create another, and I suspect that this is one that most people are already familiar with. This is a very quick way to create a new part of the same type that you're standing on in the tree. So I will demonstrate. In fact, I already did, but I don't know if anybody noticed. So I'm standing on a function requirement here. And let's say I want to create another one. I just hit I press my Enter key, and the new requirement dialog displays. As you can see, the library is going to be pre-populated to be the same library as the part that I selected. So you just need to enter a name and click OK. And the new part gets placed below the part that you had selected. Now, note that you are restricted by the meta model, the structure of the database. So if your meta model does not allow, for example, more than one of a particular part type, it's going to tell you that no, you can't create another one of these in this structure. I can give you a quick example of that. Let's say I'm standing on function requirements here, and I try to create another one by pressing Enter. It's telling me that the another function is disabled. It's only allowed to have one function requirements. Another obstacle to using this shortcut or to create another part is also obviously if the parent is in a released state, meaning it cannot be edited, then you can't press Enter. Oh, sorry about that, I'm in the wrong place. If I wanted to create another requirement for this function, it's not going to let me do it because low-speed emergency braking is in a released state, so it's not editable. So that is that, but a real quick way to create parts. Another shortcut is the cut and paste or copy and paste shortcuts. You would use this if you wanted to, say, move a part from one location, maybe farther down, somewhere in the structure tree. So you would select it and hit Control X to cut, or Control C to copy, if you're going to be copying, and then move down to the new location, the new parent, so to speak, and hit Control V. You'll be prompted to paste it as a valid part type for the new location. So I'm going to show you that as well. Let's say I want to move this requirement. I'm going to hit Control X, and I'm going to come down here to constant cruise control and hit Control V. So it's telling me, yes, you can move this, and you can paste it here as a requirement. So then it moves, it disappears from there, and it moves to its new location. Same thing goes here. You're going to be restricted by the meta model, as well as the status of the new parent. So it's only going to work if additional part types are allowed, or if the parent is not in a released state. So some more shortcuts in the structure. This one's pretty cool. This is more of a layout adjustment operation. The Control Plus and the Control Minus, they allow you to toggle between the default column width and an expanded width, so that you can see so that it fits the content. And I'll show you that as well. As you can see here in my structure tree, I tend to add a lot of additional columns here. I like to work that way, but you can see here that the content is cut off. So a quick way to see all of it is to hit Control Plus, and it expands the column so you can read. And I can hit Control Minus then if I need to, if I want to give the right-hand pane more real estate again. This works. These shortcuts work as well in grid views. So anytime you see a grid and the content is cut off, you can just hit your Control Plus to see it. And the last shortcut in the structure tree that I wanted to share is the renumbering parts using the Alt up arrow or Alt down arrow. So similar to when we did the Control X or Control C, Control X to move parts, this one is also a way to move parts. And you would use it if you want to adjust the order of an item's multiple parts. Renumbering of parts is usually done in the parts view, but as I'm going to show you here, it is possible to do this quickly in the structure tree. And you can see here, this is the parts view when I'm talking about the parts are in a numbered sequence here. So you can change that quickly in the structure tree. And the way that is done is, let's say I want to move this test requirement farther up, change the order. I'm going to hold down my Alt key and just move the up arrow. Do want to note one thing that will stand in your way if you try to do this is if you typically sometimes sort in your structure tree grid. You can see that I have sorting activated because of the gray arrow there. You cannot reorder your parts if the tree is sorted, so you would need to remove that. And then you can move down my Alt and hit the down button. So, and just wanted to close off this section by letting you know that if you're in the Explorer and you hit the open up the application help by clicking on the question mark icon at the top right, or hitting F1 at any point, you will find a complete list of shortcuts there. And that same list is also out on our support portal. So take a look at those because they could make your life a lot easier. Okay. So the next topic we're going to talk about is creating issues. And just for those that may not be super familiar with SystemWeaver, an issue is a data object. It's similar to, or just like in the same way that an item or a part is. We talk a lot about items and parts in SystemWeaver, but we do have an object called an issue, and they are organized into projects, and they're used to manage administrative processes like change requests, problem reports, or maybe work tasks. So this is an issue tracking area that's built in within SystemWeaver. We call it the change management system or projects. And you can link these issues to data, items or parts in SystemWeaver. The Explorer has a default functionality that allows you to do this, link items and issues, or issues and issues. Does not require any configuration. It's there for you. But we call these links relationships. And you can, if you can configure, an architect user can configure custom relationships or links for a project. For example, you might want to have a particular type of issue, like maybe a change request issue, be allowed to be linked to, for example, a signal item, and restrict it to that. So there's lots of options there for creating custom relationships. So these issues can be created in the context of an item, or you can create them separately in our change management system or projects module. And which one you choose is just going to determine when this link is going to get created, when you want that link to be created. So the first thing I'm going to show you is creating issues in the context of an item, because that's probably going to be the most common scenario, although it really does depend on your work process. So what you do to create an issue in the context of an item is you select the item or items as you can see, I'm standing on the items tab. I'm selecting an item here, and I click the new issue button, and I create my issue, and it is in that operation, I am actually not only creating the issue, but I am also creating the relationship or the link between the item and this new issue, as you can see here in the relationships section of the issue. So let me demonstrate that quickly. I'll just stay on this requirement here. I'm going to click New Issue. And the New Issue dialog appears. I can change, switch to a different project. Let's say I'm going to keep that. I can change my issue type. I need to give it a name. I can change the status, the assignment, the assigned to, which iteration it's going to belong to. But the important thing to notice here is that the relationship, this link to this test requirement, is getting created at the same time. I can click create and it will get created and be available for viewing in multiple ways. I can also click Create and Open, which I'm going to do now. So I'm still in the items section of the Explorer, but I've been redirected to the Issues view, where I see my new issue and the issue editor is open and I've got my reference there. So there's a link between these two objects. Let's see, let me go back to here. Another way to create an issue within the context of an item is if the item already has issues linked to it, and that's using this issues view, which I just opened. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to click on an issue here that's already linked to the test requirement, and I'm just going to press my Enter key in the same way that we did earlier for creating new parts. Same dialog appears, that important relationship's being created. The name is pre-populated. All of these top settings are pre-filled for you. You can make changes if you need to. Enter your description and create. So there you go. So that is creating issues in the context of an item. And the most important thing about doing it this way is that you get that link automatically created. But let's say that you need to create a bunch of issues for work tasks, and the items that are going to be related or worked on for that task aren't created yet. You would do this then in the projects section of the Explorer. So you need to jump over to projects and open up the particular project. And you would then use the new issue button to open up that same new issue dialog. But notice here that there's no reference links. So you would need to think of this issue as sort of being an orphan. It's not connected to the data that's going to be worked on. I can show you that really quickly. I'm going to jump over to projects, and I've got my project AB open. I'm going to click new issue, and same as before, I'm just going to create a new issue, maybe change it to a different type. So, and create. So, oops, I forgot to I forgot to add it. I'm using iterations here, so it's really important that that the iteration gets added. Otherwise, you won't be able to see it. So there we are. So here's my issue, and if we look at it in the issue editor, it's not related to any data. There's no items here referenced. And that's fine if you need to be making your issues first and then create the items afterwards. This is the way you would want to do it then. So that takes a second step where you're doing the linking, and you can do that. You can start that operation really from either the items that you are creating, or from the issue part of it, the projects tab. If you're gonna, let's just say now that I've created my items, so they're existing now, and what I can do is I can start from the items tab and I can select them. You can multi-select or just select one, and then you hit copy. And then you jump over to the projects tab, find select the issue or the issues that the item or the items are going to be linked to. You right click in the relationship section and you paste the item references. The other, I can actually go ahead and show you that. Can everyone hear me? Just want to make sure.
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, very good, very good. Just want to make sure. Okay. I'm going to, I don't know, select maybe 3 of these, and I'm going to copy or hit Control C. I'm going to jump over to projects, and let's say all 3 of them need to be linked to this issue here. I'm going to right-click in relationships, and at this point, I'm just going to point out to you something I mentioned earlier is there's a built-in kind of default relationship type called item reference, and that's always going to be available to you. In this installation, as you can see, we've configured a second relationship type called development work. So I've got actually 2 options here for the link for the relationship. I'm going to go ahead and paste the items here as development work relationships, but just for fun, I'm going to show you, I'm going to paste them as well as the default. So you see that if you are working with multiple relationship types, that they will appear kind of grouped by type. But now this issue 3 is actually linked to some data that's going to be worked on. So, and then the other option for creating these links after the fact is to do that from the starting in the projects module. And you can use this if you're going to link 1 or more issues to 1 item. So that's an option, and I'll show you that. So, for example, I'm going to grab all 3 of these issues, and I'm going to do, oops, I'm going to do Control C. So they're on my clipboard, and I'm going to head over to items, to the data, and let's say it's just this one here. I'm going to go over to the overview view, and down here at the bottom is an open issues section. If you right click in there, you can actually paste issues. So now these 3 issues are linked to this adjust speed function requirement. And there you can see how we did that. We copied the issues and went over to overview, right clicked in open issues, and pasted those links there. Good. Okay, the next topic for tips is batch editing, item or attribute values. I'm going to show you both what's available for batch editing item attributes and also batch editing part attributes. So for those that, let's back that up. For people that aren't familiar with SystemWeaver, attributes are used to describe items and parts in a structured way, as opposed to free text. You can view these attributes in lots of different views, for example, the overview, but you can also see them, they can be configured to be included in other views. And the attributes view has some unique benefits. One of them is that not only does it display the attributes of the selected item, but it also displays any part attributes of its parts. It also allows you to batch, add, or modify, or delete, or clear attribute values for most attribute types. And when would you do this? There's probably a bunch of use cases, but maybe you've imported data from another installation where a particular attribute has, 1 value, and you want to clear that out and maybe fill it with something else. So this would be a quick way to do that. And you can batch update items of the same type in a tree, but the functionality actually does work technically if you select different types, as long as they share the same attribute. So I'm going to show you how this is done. Actually, I'm going to jump down here to these ECUs. Okay. Obviously, the overview can't display anything because the view is unique for each of these items. But if I jump over to attributes, and there's a you can get to it either here or via the drop-down menu. There. So as you can see here, these ECU instances have 5 attributes. The view is going to display any common attributes. So that means that all 5 of these are shared by this type. They're all the same type, so they're going to have the same attributes. And it's going to show any common values in them. So the length bytes, for example, of 3, all of these ECUs have that value. It's going to highlight in yellow any attributes where the values are not identical. So these, somewhere here, these, they have different values in the CAN ID, and they have different comments, and that's why it's yellow. When you're batch editing in this way, the new value that you enter is going to be assigned to all of the selected items. The change is immediate, and you can change one attribute at a time, and you're going to not get a confirmation dialog. So you need to really kind of know what you're doing is what you want to do. And how you do this is, for example, I'm going to just put the same ID in here. It doesn't make sense, but I'm going to put a 2 here. And you see that the yellow disappeared. That means that all 4 of them now have a CAN ID of 2. Notice here that there's a grayed out attribute called value spec. This is an XML type of attribute, and you cannot batch edit XML type attributes. So anything you see gray is something that you can't batch edit. Okay. Also wanted to mention, oh, and I wanted to show you as well, for example, if I were to select these 4 ECUs as well as this, what is this? This is a system signals list. You notice here that I can actually batch edit the comments attribute, because these 2 part types both have the comment attribute. So they share that, and that's why it's displaying, and I can batch edit that. But you notice that the other attributes that the ECU has and the system signals doesn't have, those are hidden now. Okay. And jump back to my, so one attribute at a time, the change is immediate, and you're not going to get any confirmation dialog. There is a way to clear attribute values with a confirmation, and you can change one or more, or clear one or more attributes at a time. If you feel like you're more comfortable doing that, this is only going to work for clearing values. You can right click on, you're going to select the row for the attribute, right click, and hit remove attributes. You'll get a little dialog up which lists, you get an indication of how many items you've got selected. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of a breathing room and say, yes, I want to clear that value. So then it'll do that. And let's see. As far as clearing part attributes, as I said, the attributes view is unique in that it does show you the item parts attribute values. And you can, in the same way that I just indicated, you can select one or more attributes of a part. We're now in the part attribute section of that view. And in the same way, to clear the values there. Okay, I think I'm going to just jump forward here. The last tip I want to give you is we do have a built-in image editor as of R33, and how that works is you can, let me see here. What it does is it enables you to decrease the size of an image, and it also provides an option for attaching the original image to the item. So when you're working, you may run into an excessive data size message. Because of performance concerns, the data size of the description field is limited. So when you're inserting images, you may get that message due to the description content being too large. And it's usually because of images. And until now, until R33, users were required to use an external tool to decrease the size of an image, but now we have support for that in the Explorer. So I'm going to show you that real quick here. Go back to the overview. You need to access the image editor, you need to double click in the description to get the description editor up. And let's just say I'm going to add another image in here that I know is just going to blow it way over. You see here I'm at 142% of the allowed description size, so it's not going to let me save. So I need to modify this image in some way. So you can, and resizing it like this obviously doesn't change the image size. I'm going to right click on it and open up that new image editor. And I have options to select a JPEG or a PNG format, and both of them allow me to lower the image size so that I can fit it into my description. I can also make it grayscale, but most importantly, if I want to save the original as an attachment, I can do that. Put a comment here. And the preview image size down at the bottom here is just telling you what percentage of the entire description content is this image taking up. So I'm going to save here. And you notice immediately now that I can now save my description. I'm within the allowed size. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. So, and it's down here. And yeah, this slide is just showing what I went through, the different options available in the editor there. But note that the size indication of whether or not the selected image quality is going to enable you to save the content is really going to depend on the entire, remember this is a limit on the entire combined content of a description, so not just the image itself. So you need to be aware of that. Great. So now we're at the second part of our session. I'm going to be going through the highlights from the last 4 releases that we had since the summer conference last year, and those are R31, R32, R33, and R34. And I encourage you as well to head over to our support portal at some point, and you can read the complete release note summaries that are there. So I'm going to jump quickly over to the portal, and just briefly, because I know we don't have a lot of time left, I'm going to briefly go through these highlights, and feel free to check out them on the portal as well in the future. So in R31, we included support for mathematical expressions. There's now an insert equation tool, so you can build your mathematical expressions there. That was much appreciated. Also in R31, we added a page with a preview option for our users. This is configurable by an architect user, and basically it kind of guides users so they can preview whether or not their content in the description is going to fit within a specific page width. So you may may have documents or reports that you generate and export to kind of regularly, and you want to maybe create a page width indicator line that matches up with that template so that users can select it in the description editor here, and you can have multiple. And this indicator line will appear, and they can know where their work area is. So that's really appreciated. And if you jump on the portal, you'll see an example of that. And also in R31, we made our client API available as a NuGet package. And in addition, it's also available for use in .NET Core. Moving on to R32, we made improvements to the meta model import so that via an XML import, you can now update the list of default attributes of an existing item type. You can update the formatted text descriptions of types, and you can update the detailed information of attribute enumeration types, so the color and the value descriptions of the enumeration options. And in addition, the XML generation supports generation of the format used for the path expression of computed attributes using a new tag. And basically all this means is that when you're importing a complete data, you'll no longer need to do subsequent hands-on modifications. Okay, and in R32, one of the big highlights was that we introduced the first version of our REST API. And I suggest that you can learn more. I think if we're just going to go ahead and have you check it out on our website. There's a whole section for the REST API. And this first version was a read-only, but with subsequent releases, we've added more and more functionality. So look for new methods being added all the time for that. Jumping to the R33 release, we added an extension view for attachment search. So it's possible to view a list of all attachments linked to all items in the selected structure. And it looks like this. And then you can quickly interact with the view and jump to different items so you can see the attachments there. And next, we introduced a new coverage mapping item view without context. For those that aren't familiar with coverage views, this view is used to relate items in a structure but not connect them using a reference link. And this new version supports context tree, structure tree, and grid layouts for both the left and right hand sides of the view, whereas the older version supported structure tree only. And this is a configurable view. Also in R33, we did a huge upgrade of our description editor, and some of the highlights of the upgrade are an updated toolbar style. You can now add figure and table captions. Also something that our users have been asking for. You can zoom. There's a zoom tool, so you can zoom in on the description content, and that's going to be really helpful during online meetings. Sometimes it's hard to read content. And, there's also an additional option for pasting text only. What it does is it strips the formatting and pastes the text as Unicode. Also very helpful if your sources of data are a little bit, you have a lot of hidden characters and such. It's a good way to get clean text into SystemWeaver. And one that I really enjoy now is you can now sort in the contents of a table in your description. There's a tool for that. And then, of course, we have this new image editor, which I already covered. Okay, moving on to R34, which we released on Friday. We have an optimized default setting for the versions view. So this means that the initial loading of the view is going to be real quick. What we did is there's a top item column which is a kind of a context version column that we've now hidden as a default. Because if you have extremely huge structures with tons and tons of versions, that functionality has to work real hard to load all that information. And so what we did is we made that column optional. You can display it on an as-needed basis, just simply by right-clicking in the view and selecting Show Context Versions. Or you can right-click on the header row here and select that top item column to get that version information. We also improved support for consistency checks. There's a updated grouping mechanism so that all messages connected to one item are shown in the same column. So check out an example of that on our portal. We did an upgrade of the configurable graph component. You're not going to notice really any difference visually other than the calculation of the node widths changed a little bit. But we did this as a first step because in the next release, we're going to be addressing some improvements and some reported bugs. So we're really excited about this upgrade. And lastly, with R34, you can now restrict issue deletion in this projects module. You can configure in a project workflow whether or not users can delete issues. And this can be set for a specific workflow status, for example, closed, or all statuses. So in this example, there's a restriction. You cannot delete issues that have a status of closed, and it would look something like this for the users. That is it. And we'll go over to questions. I kind of ran through that last part pretty quickly, but we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have anything to ask our product development team, please feel free to raise your hand or just go ahead and start asking, and we hope we can answer for you.